Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I'm Kimberly Ball. I'm the Vice Chair and the Events Chair of the Handley 100th celebration. Before we get started with today's program, I do want to take a few minutes to tell you about some of the upcoming events. Our celebration will run through mid-June, so there's a lot more yet to come. On March 16th, so two weekends away, is a night of essence and excellence. Handley, of course, we're celebrating 100 years, but the Black community, Black students have only been part of Handley for the past 60 years. And during that time, they've made many contributions and accomplishments, and we are going to celebrate those, celebrating Handley students and faculty from the African American community. This is expected to be a very inspirational evening and fun evening, and it's open to all. It will be held at the Backseat Event Center on March 16th in the evening, open to all. Tickets are $30 a person and can be bought on our website at onehandley.com. Hopefully you all have memorized that website by now. And it will involve dinner, a program, dancing. It'll be a fun time. About a week after that, on March 24th, we have an event where we're partnering with Alamo Draft House and Cinema down in the Kernstown area. This will be, we have had video from Handley sports of the past, mostly football, digitized. This was actually done in partnership with the JAA and with the Handley Archives here. And those items have been put on digital format and are going to be shown in a theater there at Alamo on Sunday afternoon, March 21st. So it'll be a fun time. We do have limited tickets, so be sure to go online through Alamo's website and buy tickets there. They're only $10. And we're going to have some narrative along with that film. At the end of March, we will have another art exhibit. This one, instead of Handley as portrayed in art, this will be Handley artists. And that will be down at the Handley Library in their exhibition room, running for a full week. And so if anyone is from the artistic community and has something you'd like to contribute, please see me. And then later in the spring, we will be doing the same thing with Handley authors. So lots of people from the Handley community have published books. We have, in partnership with the Handley Library, a display being made of those books. And we have a special speaker that's going to come in to give a presentation about his career and his works, and then do a book signing. And then the last thing I'll mention, but it's not at all the last thing that will happen, is in April we're going to have a special exhibit and program of Handley's role in the Apple Blossom Festival, which, as you know, has been long and storied. And that program will include a showing of a full-length pageant from, I believe it's the 1950s. It's possible it's the late 1940s. So that's something that I know a lot of people will be interested to see and pick themselves out of from the presentation from the film. And you can watch social media. You can go to our website, onehandley.com, and follow the Winchester Star to get more information about all of that. So I hope you had an opportunity as you were coming in to view the collection of art and photographs that are on display in the Commons. We had a really good participation from community members who were willing to loan their works for the exhibit, which does run until 5 o'clock today. We want to thank all of those people who loaned pieces. There's obviously a lot of love and affection by folks in this town for their Handley art. And thanks also to the people who helped set up the exhibit, And because we're about to have an architecture program, I'll mention that we do have right out front of the auditorium entrances the blueprints. Copies of the original blueprints of the building are there. All right, and now I would like to introduce today's speaker, Carl Ekberg. Earned his bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Minnesota and his PhD from Rutgers University, leading to a career in academia. His research areas have included French colonies in the Mississippi Valley, Bourbon, France, and historical architecture and local history. Since moving to Winchester 25 years ago, Carl has directed his love of research to this area and its French and Indian War connections. He's also explored the origins of the impressive structure and grounds across the street from his home on Jefferson Street. And that, of course, is the John Handley High School. So this endeavor provided a perfect melding for Carl of his love of local history, French influence, and architecture. So Carl, you come on up here. On behalf of the Handley 100, I want to thank you for giving this presentation today. We have my ever-handy Handley 100 swag bag to give to you, but I am going to, if I can do this. So one of the items in the bag is the official and coveted Handley 100 lapel pin, which, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go ahead and bestow on you now.
Super duper. Thank you.
I'll just use your. There we go. And now you're an official Handley judge. All right, so I'm just gonna leave this right here, okay? With a few other goodies for you, and make sure I've covered everything, which I think I have. All right, so once again, join me in welcoming Carl Ekberg.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for that lovely introduction and this very charming pin. Let me explain just a little bit about my relationship with Kimberly Ball. When we first began discussing the possibility of this program, Kimberly and I were talking, and the first thing she said is, Ekberg, I notice you're not a graduate of Handley High School. So what are you bringing to the table? And so I noted that I'd lived a long time on Jefferson Street, across from Handley High School, and that I loved Handley High School. And Kimberly said, Ekberg, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So over a period of weeks, she interrogated me for 4 hours to see whether I was suitable for this job. And it's out of those interrogations that this presentation derives. And so, Kimberly, thank you for those interrogations. Huh? They really brought everything to my mind. So this lovely building, it's a place to be humble. It's the Patsy Cline Auditorium, in an auditorium designed by Walter Roy McCornack, the genius who designed Handley High School. You know, famous people have been here, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and so it's a humbling experience to be here. And I'm grateful to the 100th Anniversary Committee who was willing to invite me to make this presentation. I noticed Tim Humans, is Tim out here? Tim's an interesting guy. You know, he's city planner, and as city planner, he's always thinking about the future. Obviously, that's his job. That's his mind, you know, but his heart and soul are really in Winchester's history, and he is our premier historian of Winchester. Okay, so to get to the architecture, first of all, there is the fact that we have two great civic works of art in Winchester. both named after Handley, the Handley Library and the Handley High School. They both, interestingly enough, derive from France. This one derives directly from France because it's a Beaux-Arts building. And the architect, we really should call it, Barney's Library, Barney's Handley Library. He was the architect. He studied at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and so this building comes to us, directly from France. And this is, of course, almost everyone's favorite building. I call it visual hedonism. It's a voluptuous building. It's full of movement. It's emotional. It probably, if you may say so, it probably tends toward the feminine in terms of sensibility. Don't know what that is. Do we know what that is, Todd? Okay, Doc, thank you. So it's the building, its attributes of sensual pleasure, visual pleasure. I compare the Handley Library to a painting like this, French painting from the 18th century. Once again, it's pure sensuality, pure visual hedonism. Jefferson would probably have considered both of these works of art frivolous, and Jefferson was probably the least frivolous guy that you'd ever want to encounter. So with Jefferson, this is more his cup of tea. This was being painted just as he arrived in Paris, and it really looks in three different ways. It looks back to 5th century BC Roman history. This is a story of brothers being willing to die on behalf of the Roman Republic. And the brothers are on the left, and they're swearing an oath to their father, who is in the center. And this is totally different than either the library or that painting we just saw. This is entirely Roman in its aspect. It has Roman columns. It tells the story of Roman history. It's clear. Rather than tending feminine, it tends masculine. And Jefferson at one time actually said, by the way, this painting by Jacques-Louis David was being completed just as Jefferson arrived in Paris in the autumn of 1784. He arrived there, I usually say he arrived as ambassador, but he was actually not an ambassador. He was minister plenipotentiary. And I don't know the difference between an ambassador and a minister with full powers. But technically, Jefferson was there for 5 years, was American minister plenipotentiary, minister with full powers. And though Jefferson was not given to exclamations, he was cautious in what he said usually, he at one time said, "This painter is the only painter I want to see, the only painter I want to look at." So it looks back at the Roman Republic. Keep it in mind, this is done 1 year after the end of the American Revolution. So it looks at the American Revolution, the creation of the Roman Republic, the creation of the American Republic, and in sensibility, it's also looking forward to the French Revolution, which was only 5 years away, and in which Jefferson actually participated in the first portions of that French Revolution. So this is very complex. Unlike the earlier painting, the sensual one by Fragonard, this painting has multiple narratives. It's not pure sensual delight. It's narratives, important narratives about the history of Republican government. So I put Handley in the category with the last painting. It celebrates Republican government. It's lean, it's clean, it's serene, lean, clean, and serene. It's noble, it's aristocratic. It connects to the Roman Republican ideas about self-government. It's the kind of thing that Jefferson is interested in because this building itself is packed with narrative and meaning about Rome, about self-government, about Roman Republican politics, and also American Republican politics. And we're going to hear a lot more of that as this talk proceeds. So a totally different thing. Now, think about this. The library was completed in 1912, 1913. This building is only 10 years later. An extraordinary revolution in sensibility, an extraordinary revolution in what people considered beautiful and what they didn't consider beautiful. And so there's a revolution going on in Winchester between 1912, 1913, and 1920, 1923. And a lot of this has to do with the president of the Handley Board of Trustees, R. Gray Williams. We're going to hear a lot more about him. So this is Roman architecture, Jeffersonian architecture, Republican architecture too, with the narrative about self-government, Republican government. So here's the man himself, R. Gray Williams. You can see president of the Handley Trust for a long time. And let me say this, he was in charge. Sure, there was the Handley Trust, but this man was in charge. And he is the one, along with the architect, McCornack, who's responsible for Handley High School, Handley grounds, and of course for this lovely auditorium that we're sitting in. So we're gonna hear a little bit more about Mr. R. Gray Williams, who seems to be kind of a forgotten character. For example, looking at the signs that are out on the Handley campus now, Williams is not even mentioned on those signs, curiously enough. Okay, so now we have to deal quickly with this, not at length, about the Olmsted controversy. In 1916, Williams, R. Gray Williams, hired Olmsted to do a plan for Handley High School. It was completed in March, and Olmsted sent the plans to R. Gray Williams. Dennis, do we know where the hell those plans are? I don't. He sent them to Winchester, because we have a letter. Williams wrote to Olmsted. Okay, right. Sorry about that. It's a heavy mic, by the way. So Olmsted did the plan, sent them to R. Gray Williams in March of 1916, and that was pretty much the end of it. Here is John C. Olmsted's masterpiece, the Washington Park in Portland. I call it Yankee Romantic landscape. Notice there are no straight lines, there is no symmetry, there's no clear geometry to it. This is a masterpiece of a certain kind of architecture. I call it Yankee Romantic landscape architecture. So when this is Olmsted's proposal for the Handley campus. This, by the way, is online through the National Park Service site at the Olmsted Place in Massachusetts. So this was his plan, which is really just a smaller version of this plan. This was Olmsted's plan, and we know that he sent a copy of this to R. Gray Williams in Winchester. But then we don't really know what happened to it. If you look very, very carefully, and I don't know whether I can get this, if I can manage, there's the school. You see the school building? It's facing, let me see if I can get this red light to work. There it is. Okay, so here's what is now Handley Boulevard. It was then Girard Street, and here's the school building here, between Washington and Stewart, facing what is now Handley Boulevard, a kind of generic. Let me say this on behalf of Olmsted, this was not his best effort. This was not his best effort, and Williams seemed to understand that point. Okay, so in 1919, R. Gray Williams, who again was in charge, was looking for the right architect, and he brought this guy in from Cleveland, an MIT grad, who would design many, many schools in Cleveland, and happened to be a friend of the brand new superintendent of schools in Winchester. So there's a connection between a guy named Fred Clerk, who was Winchester's first superintendent of schools, and the hiring of McCornack by R. Gray Williams. So, fateful Saturday morning, July 19th, 1919, Williams and McCornack go up to the corner of what is now Braddock and Handley Boulevard. You can see it was called Girard Street then, right here. They come up here, and Williams says to McCornack, you know, we've got a ton of money. We've got a big 72-acre piece of ground here. Tell me what you want to do about it. And so on that morning, in a matter of just a few hours, McCornack articulated to Williams what his plan was for Handley, both the grounds and the building. That happened in the morning, and nothing in writing about this until they signed the contract that afternoon. Here are the two of them, huh? And one day they made the decision and signed the contract. Now, two things I find really remarkable about this is, as far as we know, McCornack, the architect, never actually made a formal written proposal. This was simply conversations between McCornack and Williams. Point number one. And point number two, although Williams had a copy of Olmsted's previous plan, there's absolutely no evidence that McCornack and Williams ever discussed Olmsted's plan. It looks like Williams just threw it away. I mean, it was never put into effect, and there's absolutely no evidence that McCornack had any interest in the plan of Olmsted, which was contrary to the way McCornack wanted to do it in any case. Okay, let's move on from that issue. So one day, these two guys put their heads together and sign a contract, you know. $1 million contract decided in less than one day. So it's in the Winchester Star 2 days later. They have McCornack's name spelled wrong, you'll notice. Yeah, they have the architect's name spelled wrong, notice up at the top, huh? It's McCornack, not McCarnack. But in any case, the Winchester Star was just getting to know this guy, this architect who would have such a huge influence in Winchester. And notice that he was telling the Winchester Star that the University of Virginia, that is to say, Jefferson's work would inspire his work. And so what McCornack was telling Williams on that fateful weekend was, I'm going to use Jeffersonian principles when I design your school and when I design the grounds. So, a little bit more than a year later, Sunday dinner, November 21st, 1920, at Williams' house. You should drive by it. This is a remarkable place because a remarkable guy lived there. And there is an historic sign in front of it, but it doesn't pertain to R. Gray Williams. It pertains to the woman who built this house. So at Sunday dinner on November 21st, 1920, I'm not sure about this. This has now died out on me. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you. So at this Sunday dinner, the most important Sunday dinner in the history of Winchester, McCornack reveals to Williams his plan, his model. Now, there's a mystery that I've tried to talk to people about in Winchester. This model has gone missing. Apparently, there are people in Winchester who saw this model. And there are wonderful photographs in the Winchester Library archives, in the Handley archives, but the model itself is gone. So let me point out some things about it. First of all, there is a superb building, the main building, okay? A wonderful piece of architecture. How can I get up there? You can see the building, okay? Then on the left, you can see that McCornack creates Jefferson Street to add some symmetry to it. Notice the rigorous geometry, notice the symmetry, notice the colonnades of trees. But most importantly to me, the genius. I think the building we're in is a really, really fine piece of architecture. But the genius in this plan is the way McCornack integrated the building with the athletic field with the grounds. And Williams understood that. You can see what Williams is saying up there. He's saying that these are all part of the same package. The building where the formal education takes place and the grounds are all an integrated package. Huh? I think, to me, that's the genius of this. And so to attempt to separate the building from the grounds, you can't do that, because the grounds are an architectonic extension of the building. This is actually vintage classical French landscape building, like Versailles to some extent, like Vaux-le-Vicomte, and there are some other chateaus in France that had some influence here too. But to me, it's fascinating that you see that Williams understood all this. He was really, he was a very, very sophisticated thinker. And he and McCornack, they seem to be always on exactly the same page. Okay, here's UVA, Jefferson's famous plan, which is, a World Heritage Site now, I think. One of the most famous campuses in the world. And you'll notice that there are some of the same attributes: the geometry, the colonnades of trees, the symmetry, the main building, with then the flanking allée of avenues and trees. Of course, the cute thing about this, the interesting thing, is that Jefferson had housing for professors and for students along the corridor, along the main corridor. However, I'm going to propose, when we look at this, that this is a greater work of genius. I think McCornack's plan for Handley is better than UVA. Take a look at him. Take a look at the way he's integrated things here. It really is a work of genius. This looks a little tawdry compared to McCornack's plan, doesn't it? I hate to call the University of Virginia tawdry, but but relative to Handley, not as good. Don't have to agree with that. Okay, so after that Sunday dinner on November 21st, McCornack's model, which he had unveiled to Williams at the Sunday dinner, goes on exhibition in the library, in Handley Library. So this is the way this, it's interesting to read these old newspapers because, they're right on top of things, huh? And so that fabulous, does anyone in here know what happened to that model? To McCornack's original model? It would be, I think it would be worth millions of dollars if someone knew where that would be. Huh? It's an extraordinary thing. Okay, so now we have to move to Paris. Little change of pace here. Jefferson in Paris is, once again, as I said, he was our minister with full powers in Paris for 5 years. Maybe when you read his letters, and many of them have been published, the letters he wrote while in Paris, I think that these 5 years were maybe the happiest years of his life. Can you get oriented here? You see Notre Dame on the Ile de la Cité. I can't get this thing to, it's my being awkward that I can't. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Notre Dame here with the Ile de la Cité, the Louvre, the Tuileries Gardens, the Place de la Concorde, and most importantly for us right now, the Champs-Élysées. So you're kind of oriented. And then, of course, the Seine River flowing right through the city. Okay, so Jefferson lived out on the Champs-Élysées, just about where the sea is. Why is it that I'm so awkward with this thing? You see the sea in the Champs-Élysées out there? That's about where Jefferson lived. There we are. Maybe if I never turn it off, it would. Okay, so here is a plaque posted in French and I'll just quickly say it was put up in 1919. Sorry. It was put up in 1919 by graduates of the University of Virginia who had fought in World War I. And they put this plaque up to commemorate the place on the Champs-Élysées where Thomas Jefferson lived. So this was put up, once again, former students of the University of Virginia who put this up to commemorate the place where Jefferson lived on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Now, what I'm suggesting is that you UVA graduates in here, you need to get to Paris and you need to persuade the mayor to put up a little translation of this. Doesn't that make sense? And people walk by this and they don't know what's going on, huh? But this is a hugely important plaque for people who are interested in Jefferson's life in Paris. Okay, here is a view down the Champs-Élysées, looking in an easterly direction. And let me see, you can see some landmarks. Why is it? There it is. There's Notre Dame. There's the Invalides. There's the Tuileries. There's the Louvre down there. There's the Place de la Concorde. Okay, so Jefferson lived right over here. This is his house in Paris. And see the 1,640 steps? That's how many steps it took Jefferson to go from this fence to the center of the Place de la Concorde. And how did he know that? Because Jefferson, being Jefferson, he had a pedometer on his right ankle to count his steps. Now, I have tried to make that same walk. No way, no way, no way. 1,640 steps. Took me almost twice that many. I used a clicker and counted my steps. Took me almost twice that many. Jefferson. In any case, you'll notice here that this is classical French landscape architecture, and actually is to some extent similar to the Handley grounds. The symmetry, the colonnades of trees, the association of the buildings with the landscape. So the French tradition of classical landscape was incorporated into the plans of McCornack. This is looking in the other direction. This is looking eastward over the top of Handley High School. Jefferson was there for this balloon in September 1744. Jefferson witnessed the ascent of this balloon. Okay, so now let's take a little Jefferson walk. Let's go back up the Champs-Élysées to where he lived, about where the sea is here in the Champs-Élysées. Let's start here, down the Champs-Élysées, 1,640 steps, if you're Jefferson, to the center of the Place de la Concorde, then into the Tuileries Gardens here. Huh? So we're walking down the Champs-Élysées in an easterly direction into the Tuileries Gardens, and then we're going to cross to the left bank. And we're going to cross on this footbridge. So the Tuileries Garden on your right, the left bank appropriately on your left. And this is a footbridge. And so if we go into the Tuileries Garden, go to the footbridge, start over the footbridge, and start looking toward the left bank, you'll notice a statue down there. See the statue? Here? It's a big one. That is Thomas Jefferson. Here he is. I call it the "Don't Tell Me" statue, because look at his stance, look at his gaze. He is saying, you know, if you want to disagree with Thomas Jefferson, good luck, you know. It doesn't work, huh? I think this is the best portrait ever done of Thomas Jefferson. The best portrait ever done is this one, because it shows his extraordinary self-confidence. You know, a self-confidence that goes on into a kind of intellectual righteousness. And he has something in his left hand, and what he has there, lo and behold, is Handley High School. Couldn't be anything else, could it? It's Handley High School. How could that be? It's 200 years out of the, wrong, huh? In any case, the artist here was this guy, and 30 years ago, in the good old days, before 9/11, the American Embassy used to have cultural social hours on Sunday afternoons. And I happened to be in Paris at that time. I can't remember the exact date. It's about 30 years ago. And the speaker that afternoon was Jean Cardot, who was working on his Jefferson statue. And that's why the ambassador invited him to come and speak. And all you needed to get into the embassy was an American passport. This is before 9/11, huh? And so he gave a talk in pretty good English to an American audience in the American Embassy on a Sunday afternoon. And let me tell you this, he had studied Jefferson. He had studied Jefferson inside and out, from toes to the top of his head. He really knew Jefferson. And so when he is characterizing Jefferson's personality here, that confidence, that righteousness, that, quite extraordinary. Of course, Jefferson, when he arrived in Paris in 1784, was kind of like a god to the French people. The American Revolution had just ended a year earlier. Everybody in France who was literate had read a French version of the Declaration of Independence. When Jefferson arrived, he was a veritable god. And he kind of looks like one here. And by the way, look at those racehorse legs, huh? 1,640 steps from his house down the Champs-Élysées to the center of the Place de la Concorde. I challenge you to try that. But he was 6'2½", and he did seem to have extraordinarily long legs. And so, of course, this is not Handley High School, but it simply is a piece of classical architecture because the artist, the sculptor, Jean Cardot, knew that Jefferson was deep, deep, deep into classical architecture. Okay, so in 1787, Jefferson took an excursion around France in his coach, and sometimes he went by water. He'd put his coach on a boat and went by water, but basically he went by coach all around France. Okay, so in the spring of the year, he got to the city of Nîmes, and when he was in Nîmes, it was like paradise to him. You can follow this in his published correspondence, by the way. This is not arcane material. And so Jefferson wrote to a very high-ranking French aristocratic woman, Madame de Tessé. This is published material. He wrote to her in English, and she responded in French. But this is such an important letter. Here he says, Madame, I'm gazing whole hours at the Maison Carrée. That's this building. I am gazing whole hours at the Maison Carrée like a lover at his mistress. From Lyon to Nîmes, I have been nourished with the remains of Roman grandeur. They have always brought you to my mind because I know of your affection for whatever is Roman and noble. This is amazing, huh? It took 9 days for the letter to get from Nîmes to Paris. And the Comtesse responded immediately. And it's interesting the way, in their correspondence, and by the way, there are many, many letters between these two. Jefferson wrote in English and she responded in French. And this correspondence continued after Jefferson came back to America, continued on through his presidency. In any case, picking up on the little bit of eroticism in Jefferson's letter about gazing like a lover at his mistress, she responds, "Cher monsieur, your letter is the only thing that arouses in me a passion for the ancient world." Huh? This is typical French kind of interplay of intellectual stuff with a little bit of eroticism. Interestingly enough, she signs off, "I have the honor of being, monsieur, your humble and very obedient servant." This is a French countess writing to a guy from rural Virginia. "I am your humble and very obedient servant." This is amazing stuff, huh? This is amazing stuff. So Jefferson, of course, many of you probably know that, used this building as a model for the State House in Richmond. Jefferson had a model done that he took back with him and used for this. And he used it. This is the famous rotunda at the University of Virginia. Look closely at the portico of this because McCornack took it pretty much lock, stock, and barrel for Handley High School. That is to say, the portico from the rotunda at UVA, designed by Jefferson, was simply lifted by McCornack, that's okay, and used it at Handley. You know, artists, great artists, are always stealing stuff from other people, you know. What's the story about Shakespeare? Every one of his plays has a storyline that he took from someone else. That none of the storylines, except there's one, I've forgotten which one it is. All of his plays have a storyline taken from somewhere else, including Hamlet. So McCornack ripped this off the rotunda and put it on Handley High School. But then there's the rest of it. And for that, McCornack went to one of Jefferson's favorite buildings in Paris, the east front of the Louvre. And Jefferson wrote about this. He said, "This is the model I would like to use for public buildings." And so what McCornack does is he takes the portico from the rotunda, and then he puts it together with this and comes up with Handley. It's great. So he was stealing stuff, McCornack was, but he was stealing it with genius. Okay, now, yeah.
If you'd like to switch over to the lapel mic, I can do that for you. That way you don't have to carry it.
Oh, let me see if I can discipline myself. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so this is 1840, the courthouse in Winchester. Jeffersonian classicism, very pure Jeffersonian classicism. This is a Roman temple. You can see the same thing at the courthouse in Berryville, the same thing at the courthouse in Charlestown, West Virginia. They were all built about the same time, 1840 or a little bit after that. So there was some movement at that time to pay attention to Jeffersonian classical ideals in architecture. There was a little effort. You can see that you can also see it at Belle Grove, and you can see it at Anfield in Clark County. Okay, so this is pure Jeffersonian Roman classical architecture. And here is the Lutheran Church, built in 1842. Same thing, nice Roman temple in front on the original, the second Grace Lutheran Church. But they decided to tear it down and put this up in 1877 because Jefferson was being put out of fashion. And between the 1840s and Handley High School, no more Jefferson architecture. For 80 years, no Jefferson architecture between the courthouse and Handley High School. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is not very Jeffersonian, is it? It's an interesting pile of stone and bricks, but it ain't Jeffersonian. What is it? Right. Okay, so Jefferson then makes, and this is one of my major premises here, is that beginning with Handley High School, there is a huge resurgence in Jeffersonian architecture. And there's a huge influence of Handley High School. Now this one, I've talked a lot to Tim Humans about this. You know, they say it was, the parts of it are 1787, but this is not colonial architecture. Yep, sorry, yep. This is not colonial architecture. And we're thinking that this portico was put on maybe about the same time as Handley High School was built. I would love to know if there's any evidence precisely when this was done. Okay, so look at the dates on these buildings. Handley, 1923. Look at the date on this. There's a little bit of irony here in the Baptist Church because Jefferson's idea on religion weren't exactly like Baptist ideas, but that doesn't make any difference. Jefferson was making a huge comeback, and this is because of Handley High School. I love this building. Look at the dates again. These are all right after Handley. You can see the influence of Handley High School. It's massive around town. Even now, out at Meadow Branch Apartments, straight from Jefferson. Even here, look at the museum designed by Michael Graves. Look at the facade of this museum, and then look at Handley High School. Graves was obviously using Handley High School. He was famous for that, by the way. Graves was famous for going into an area, looking at the surrounding architecture, and then incorporating features of it in the buildings he was doing. So there's absolutely no doubt that Graves was using Handley High School when he did the Museum of the Shenandoah Valley. Then you see it here. These were just added recently. Little Roman temples on these apartment buildings. You can't get away from it. They're all over the place. So I stopped and talked to this guy and asked him how he felt about sitting in a Roman temple. He was betting on college basketball with his phone. He was not interested in Roman temples or Thomas Jefferson or Republican government, believe me. I love this. There's a touch of class on Kent Street. Little Roman temples over the corridors. So, trying to put this together, I was trying to make the point, a primary point, that there's an important message in the architecture of Handley High School. And it's the association of Roman architecture, the Roman Republic. You know, these people like Jefferson were crazy about the Roman Republic. I don't think he ever talked about Greek architecture. It was always Roman architecture because there was the association with the Roman Republic. Roman Republic meant self-government, requires education and virtue. Therefore, the University of Virginia, therefore, Handley High School. And that's a famous quote from Benjamin Franklin during the Constitutional Convention. A woman approached Franklin on the street in Philadelphia and said, "What kind of a government are you making for us?" And this was Franklin's famous response. Okay, so let me conclude by telling you about a recurring dream I have. I'm on the Champs-Élysées, walking as fast as I can, the same avenue where the Nazis marched in June 1940, and the Allies marched in August 1944. And I'm walking down the Champs-Élysées toward the Tuileries Garden as fast as I can go, and Jefferson is 10 feet in front of me. And try though I may, I can't catch him. But I wanted to catch him because I had important questions to ask him. And finally, he stops at a cafe, sits down, orders a bottle of his favorite white Burgundy, which happens to be a Chassagne Montrachet, sits down, he starts sipping his wine, motions me to sit down, and I'm thinking we're going to talk about the natural rights of man, we're going to talk about self-evident truths, we're going to talk about Republican government, and all of a sudden Jefferson says, "Ekberg," he sounded just like Kimberly Ball, Ekberg, let's talk about Handley High School. So the dream starts out terrible. I can't do it. I can't keep up. But it terminates with a discussion of Handley High School, which is what this has been today. And thank you very much for being an indulgent audience. Thanks a lot.